Happy Halloween. You've reached a fright-tacular edition of The Signal Watch. I'm your ghost, Ryan Steens. Most episodes, we discuss movies, television, comics, and more. But for Halloween, we're asking you to join me and my co-ghost, Spooky Simon, for a horrifically fun 5 episodes of Halloween frights. This year, we're talking horror sequels, the movies they made to catch lightning in a bottle one more time, and maybe make some cash along the way. And we'll try to put it all in perspective. Stay terrified. We're gonna try to make this weird.
Hey everybody, happy Halloween and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me this spooky day is
Simon Day again. Hello, happy Halloween. And said he falling over all his words. We're doing Psycho 2 today. It's 22 years later and Norman Bates is coming home.
We're doing sequels of well-known horror films as kind of our theme for this Halloween. And I had never seen Psycho 2. Yeah, hopefully good sequels. But I'd never seen Psycho 2. I'd heard about it over the years, always heard it's better than you think it is, air quotes. And I am delighted to say that was true.
Well, I'm very happy at the moment. That could change because I think last week we did Halloween 3 and today we're doing Psycho 2. And I think I've been trying to get you to watch both of those for a while. And yeah, Psycho 2 is great. I'm a big champion of it. In fact, Heresy, I might actually prefer it to Psycho.
Yeah, you can't say that on this podcast.
But yeah, it's just I don't know. I guess I saw it at the right age again. I must have seen it on TV late night, probably 1984, 85. It came out in 83 theatrically. Obviously, I didn't see it at the theatre. And yeah, I remember even as a kid, it kind of holding my attention, and which is kind of unusual because it's quite talky. I mean, it does have about 3 or 4 kind of pretty full-on death scenes, kind of scary, kind of shock death scenes. But I mean, a lot of it is just talky. It's more like a kind of mystery, really, because you've got, a very convoluted plot, but very well done. You
Yes.
can follow what's going on. But really, I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but basically, Norman's released from, the mental hospital.
Yeah, we should say, do not listen to this if you haven't seen the movie, because I would really want you to go into it the way I did, not knowing a thing. Definitely watch the first Psycho and then come back and rejoin us at whatever minute this is in the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so kind of glad you didn't have it spoiled for you, because it's got a bunch of great twists, and as it goes on, I think it kind of gets better because none of the characters really know who they can trust. Like you basically got Norman released from his mental hospital. He's trying to hang on to his sanity, his hard-won sanity over the last 20 years, and basically you've got Vera Miles as Lila Loomis, who's, I guess, the sister of Janet Leigh, trying to drive him crazy and using her daughter Meg Tilly, which you don't realize that for a while that she's her daughter. By kind of like pretending to be mother and moving stuff around the house and like phoning him up in the middle of the night and trying to push him over the edge. And while this is happening, other murders are being committed, which I feel like for a while we're not sure if that's Norman. We're kind of pretty sure it's not Norman, but at the same time, who's doing that? And then towards the end, I feel like Mary McTilly doesn't know whether to trust her mum, whether mum's being crazy. Norman thinks he's going crazy. We're not sure if Norman's going crazy. People keep getting killed, so somebody else is out there, and they handle it really well.
Right. It was, I believe, written and directed by Tom Holland, who had been responsible for Fright Night, or would be responsible for Fright Night.
Yeah, and the first Child's Play as well.
Yeah, so he had quite the run here. It doesn't feel like Fright Night, other than the guy really knows how to build tension.
Yeah.
That's probably the closest thing I would say that they have in common.
I would say black comedy as well, because it's got a kind of very I don't think you should be embarrassed to kind of laugh at bits to this, because I think they are supposed to be funny. Like towards the end, where Norman's really starting to lose it and is kind of slipping back into madness. I think Meg Tilly goes, "I'm going to prove to you that it was me dressing up as your mother." And like Norman goes, "That would be a great weight off my mind," and stuff like that. So I think it definitely is kind of blackly comic without becoming spoofy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's definitely some things in the film that are, I mean, just even the sheriff character and kind of him summing everything up for everybody as to what happened when he has it completely all wrong. And weirdly, the sheriff being this cheerleader for Norman.
Yeah. Well, the irony is, this is probably the closest Norman gets to sanity, sadly, in the whole franchise. And really, he is, I mean, I guess you could say, like, Lila Loomis's plan works. She does drive him to fall back into old ways, finally, by the film's end. And it's like, and it's kind of like, it's ironic that the victims, or the relations of his previous victims, want him to become mad again.
Yeah. It's an unforeseen twist to the film. Yeah. I mean, the assumption being, from her perspective, and she was kind of, I believe, the final girl in Psycho, was that he's already mad. We just need to
prove it.
Yeah. And it's not going to take much to do that. So yeah, if you've seen the original Psycho, it actually opens with the Janet Leigh scene, which is probably, yeah, I would say that's maybe the biggest miscalculation in the film. But it's also, it's 1983. I think I said in a prior podcast, my family didn't have a VCR till 1985. Yeah. Access to those films was not super great. They did not show Psycho on TV very much, because at this point your best bet for watching a film on TV was going to be either something that was on a network or something that was being shown on HBO, and HBO wasn't going to show something from 1961 at this point. You're still years away from American movie classics and Turner Classic Movies. So I'd grown up hearing about Psycho, but I always thought for some reason it was from the 1940s when I was like a little kid. And then the poster for this came out in the trailer, and my mom was like, "Ooh, Norman Bates." And I was like, "He's young." And I was like, "He should be an old man." And she's like, "No, that movie was like when I was in high school." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I was able to kind of date it to, when that movie had actually come out. I didn't see Psycho itself until I was in college, I want to say. At best high school, but I'm pretty sure I didn't get around to seeing Psycho till college. And they refer to it so much at least back in the 90s in film school.
With the Vince Vaughn remake as well.
And then the Vince Vaughn remake came out, which was itself a film school project. It felt like I've never seen it. I couldn't be bothered to go see somebody go blow through a whole bunch of money remaking, a film that was largely, if you were in film school in the 90s, considered to be quasi perfect, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Maybe that's why I hold this in such high esteem, because I think I saw Psycho after this, probably a few years after.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, at the time this would have looked modern, whereas Psycho would have looked, pretty, especially being black and white, pretty ancient right. to a young person. Even though, now I obviously appreciate Hitchcock and, but I think, just kind of seeing this, was kind of like, quite a kind of shock, especially the ending, I think, because, that comes out of nowhere a little bit. And you're just like, okay, it's back to business as usual, which is kind of sad in a way for the character, because it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy of Norman Bates. He had that brief glimmer of sanity, and it was kind of snatched away from him.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie, and it's hard to imagine the kind of roller coaster that Norman Bates is on being played by anybody but Anthony Perkins. Like I recently watched the film Remember My Name, which was produced by Robert Altman but directed by a guy who'd worked on Nashville, and it includes Geraldine Chapman. She's kind of the lead character. In Anthony Perkins is kind of the it basically is Geraldine Chapman showing up, I think that's the right name, in Los Angeles, and she starts harassing the couple, and you don't know why. And it's an excellent film. I highly recommend it. And he's so freaking good in that movie. And then going and watching in totally understated and natural, and then watching this, and he's still understated. He's still Anthony Perkins. And that is, to me, why Norman Bates works. It's like you said that line, like, oh, that'd be a great weight off my mind. Like, he's not salivating. He's not like, doing bug eyes when he does that line. Norman Bates means that in that moment.
Well, also, like, some people laugh at this scene, but I think it's incredibly poignant where I guess like Meg Tilly's kind of comforting him. And he's like, you smell nice. You remind me of my mother. Like, she used to make me toasted cheese sandwiches. And, they bring that back later. Well, I think he asks his, at the end, his real mum, just before he hits over the head with a shovel. He's really like a toasted cheese sandwich. But it's just like, he just plays that very straight. I'm watching it this time. I really paid attention to how his kind of twitch gets worse as the film goes on. And I mean, it's really a guy kind of losing his mind, and it's really good.
Yeah. I think it's really helped along by the fact that I wouldn't have known in the mid 80s who he was. I think I knew who he was by the time I was in high school. Is Robert Loggia plays his psychologist.
A very nice role for Robert Loggia. He's not playing a gangster for change.
Right. That's true. I know him from his like latter career stuff as playing like the avuncular grandpa or whatever, and then gangsters and like nothing else. But he does play the psychologist who's he's invested in Norman. He wants to see him do well. He's also like not super close to the mental hospital, and there's no social workers who can come deal with him. But, they're pretty sure this is going to work out, which you're like, nothing says sending somebody back to their spooky old house where they murdered people is going to work out. But it's the setup. It is kind of what it is. But it also includes Dennis Franz, who was a big deal in America in kind of the late 80s, early 90s. He played a lot of cop roles, sort of stuff. Famously showed his ass on broadcast TV, I believe.
We got Dennis Franz as a scumbag. He's typecast here. So.
Yeah. He plays the guy who has been as the motel has been kind of a ward of the state while
into a knocking shop. It's like basically player. So come do your drugs here. Come do your drugs up.
Yeah, I mean it's so he's been running as a not as a brothel, but definitely like turned the Bates Motel into something shady, which of course Norman and Mother could never have.
No.
And
a great moment when Anthony Perkins first brings Meg Tilly back as well, where he reaches for key one. He's like, no. Not take that one.
and the attention to that detail of like, I guess everything must have been the remaining sets. I didn't have a chance to look it up.
So that is the original house. But they had to remake the hotel part. And then I think they actually built another house on another part of the lot for some shots. But it's it's definitely such a great environment in general. And I love so we should talk a little bit about Richard Franklin, who directed this, who's kind of like the Aussie version kind of Brian De Palma. So before this, he'd made Patrick, which I don't know if you've ever seen.
No.
Kind of lots of Aussie exploitation, but about a guy in a coma who kind of like controls things with his mind from hospital. A big hit with Quentin Tarantino. Loves that movie. Then he also did Road Games, which you and I should watch, with Stacey Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis, which is kind of like Rear Window, but from a truck driver's perspective. So this guy was totally into Hitchcock, actually invited Hitchcock to his university to do a lecture, and they became friends. So he kind of had the seal of approval, before Hitchcock died, of kind of this. And he even phoned the family to make sure it was okay that he was doing Psycho 2. But he was like a huge connoisseur, fan, critic of Hitchcock. And I love some of the shots because he's not just kind of like, he's not aping the original Psycho, but he's definitely like really paying attention to what Hitchcock did. Like there's a fantastic shot where Norman gets locked in the attic and it pans from the window of him looking out the window across the roof of the house and down to these two kids break into the basement to, I guess, like smoke a joint and have sex. And that's a great shot. And there's a few of those shots, actually.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear that he had that relation. I couldn't figure out quite how anyone had the gall to decide that they were gonna do this.
I think he had a blessing from the master,
Yeah, and you can it's like you just said, it's not slavish to the original, but it definitely, like, I couldn't believe how accurate everything felt. Like, you just, back in the 80s, it just didn't feel like people, from movie to movie, sequel to sequel, unless they shot them back to back and were immediately using the sets.
Yeah.
People didn't care about that kind of thing. And this movie absolutely cares about that stuff. Everything feels very much like it's of a piece of the original film.
Which is the point where I think they even dug out some of the original props for the house, like the hands that the mother has, the two brass hands the mother has on her dressing table.
Mm-hmm.
They actually found some of those in storage and just dusted them off.
It'd only been 20 years. Like like all of this movie now is 40 years from when it was released. So it wouldn't have been that hard, with just 20 years in between to find some of this stuff. But when he went to the board, and let's say keyboard, which is not quite right, but the board where they have all the hooks with the keys, that was really where I was like, oh my God, the detail on this thing. Like, I can't believe what the ends they went to make it all have continuity.
Yeah. And there's lots of little in jokes in there as well. I think there's like Hitchcock's shadow on the wall at one point, which I missed, but apparently it's in there on the mother's bedroom. I think when he first goes into the mother's bedroom, when he first gets back,
okay,
the silhouette of Hitchcock, kind of on the sheet. So, they really put in the effort and time on this, and, they wanted it to be good. And finally, it's totally different from Robert Bloch's sequelized novel, which went in a totally different direction. That was a satire of slasher movies. And I think Norman Bates gets killed off in the novel pretty early by the new killer. But the studio went, no, we don't want that. And that's when they brought in Tom Holland.
Interesting. Yeah, Robert Bloch was the guy who had written the original Psycho. So,
yeah. So I mean, I guess this is one of those rare examples where the people making the sequel totally respect and want to honor the original, but they also, don't want to slavishly copy it. Well, this isn't like Friday the 13th Part 2 or 3 or 4. It's like they kind of want to do something different, but they want to like also not tarnish the reputation of the original.
What do you think of Meg Tilly as an actor?
So I thought she was great in this. I thought she was perfect in this. Towards the end, I think she was maybe stretching a bit further than comfortable. But then by that point, everything's getting a bit histrionic. She's got the wig on. I was like, yeah, it's getting a little bit silly now. But she's also playing like a young 20-year-old girl. So I'm like, that's probably how they would act. She would act. So I actually gave her a pass. I thought she was actually pretty good. I haven't really seen her in anything else though, so I can't really judge against anything else.
As a kid, I just took Meg Tilly as a fact of existence. And
she seems a lot better than Jennifer Tilly, who always plays an almost panto type role in things.
Yeah, but I love Jennifer Tilly.
Chucky.
Well, maybe the first thing I saw Jennifer Tilly in that I knew who she was Bound. But
you dirty old man.
Man, that movie. But she's always just kind of the same. And I always feel like she's doing the thing that actresses were all doing in the 70s, kind of post Diane Keaton, of like, oh yeah, I do all my lines in this like kind of breezy way that always makes it sound like maybe I've had a partial lobotomy.
Isn't that 20-year-olds though? I mean, I feel
maybe it's the uptalk of that period. Like, maybe.
Yeah. Because I felt it was kind of like, because I really liked the relationship between her and Norman,
but that's what was written. That's not her performance, though.
But I suppose what I'm saying is I quite liked, or at least didn't have issues with her performance. I felt like out of all the actors, she was probably the most actorly. But then again, she's playing a young 20-year-old who's a bit hysterical anyways. So
yeah, she's in. If you've never seen The Big Chill, which you should watch The Big Chill at some point. Lawrence Kasdan, can't go wrong. She's in that, and that to me is the perfect Meg Tilly role. She's not supposed to be real with it. She's just kind of getting kind of passed around through life of like, this girl clearly can't help herself, so someone has to kind of constantly be responsible for her. And
isn't she like the sexy kind of girlfriend who's like not that intelligent?
Which is also fascinating to me because it's very like Linda Ronstadt sexy. Of like, she's cute, but they always sold her as like, Meg Tilly's so sexy. I'm like, is she? But it's before we got into kind of like the late 80s definition of what sexy was, right? Of silicone and everything else, but and giant hair. But it's it's, I always find her kind of a fascinating choice, and kind of the fact that people decided she was a thing for 10 years or so to be kind of fat. I mean, and she's not bad in this. I don't want to say she's bad in this, but I do agree that like in the last reel, when everything has kind of gone up to 11, I think she's maybe a little out of her depth in that, but it almost works for what they're doing because the character is so out of her depth.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just hit on the nail there. I think it's the fact that, when she's on the phone shouting mother, it's kind of like, what's really the difference here between her and Norman? You know what I mean? They're both unraveling pretty fast.
And there's so many weird parallels like that in the film that it's just so well written, of her dealing with her own crazy mother who she has no idea I think at this point,
yeah, he's dead.
Dead in the basement. When does she figure that out?
It's when she goes down there to get the clothes to prove to him they're dressed up, and then he bumps into the coal, and it falls off the corpse.
Yeah,
and then she starts stabbing him. Yeah.
The end of this movie is so insane.
There's a great bit as well that always makes me laugh, where I guess like she runs upstairs and she's like, Norman, I'm your mother, put the phone down. And then she runs back downstairs and he's like, I'm sorry, somebody just interrupted his mother. Anyway, what were you saying? She's like, there's nobody on the phone.
Well, yeah, and that's the misdirection of the movie, because you don't know about the third party who's involved with all of this stuff until the very, very end of the movie. Where
it's almost like the underlying theme is what is crazy, because you've got 3 different types of crazy going on there. Really, you got the ones who are driven to doing, despicable things, even though they're supposed to be championing justice. You've got Norman, who's supposed to be in recovery, but he's kind of slipping away. And then you find out the big twist is like you've got his real mum, who's going around killing people to protect him.
Yeah. My assumption before you realize that, the kindly Mrs. Spool they meet at the beginning of the movie, who works at the restaurant with Meg Tilly and Norman, was that Norman, he says, I used to black out when I do these things. Yeah. And so I thought like him getting locked in, I'm doing air quotes, into the attic was a manifestation of, which you're misled. That's the director and writer did a perfect job, and Anthony Perkins led me to believe that that was a manifestation of his madness, was him believing he was physically locked in there when physically he'd actually left, but mentally he was still in the attic.
Yeah.
But that's not at all. He really got locked in the attic, and Mrs. Spool was downstairs stabbing teenage boys who never show up again.
And I had a few issues with that, because I had a few issues with things doing this film, as in, without being able to teleport, how did these guys manage to totally furnish his mother's room? Expect him to A, go upstairs, B, get locked in, C, not kick the door in to get back out, or climb out on the roof or something. And like basically they had enough time to like clear the room again and put it back exactly as it was. So some of this kind of doesn't ring quite true, but you just have to go with it,
Yeah. I mean, there's the completely convoluted way that, I mean, in a way it makes a lot of sense of what Meg Tilly's character is named Mary, of Mary kind of coming and going from the house, and she just happened to be able to get a job as a waitress in the restaurant, and but if you're willing to let a few of those things go, I think what's really exciting about the movie is what you just said, was like the 3 different kind of flavors of complete insanity, all kind of dovetailing.
It's a Neapolitan madness.
But yeah,
I guess it's great as it goes on, especially the second half, where Mary's like, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't have phoned him up, and the mum's like, I didn't phone him up, and it's like everybody starts to not understand what's going on or get more confused, because they've all got like pieces in the game that they're not aware of,
and
Norman's like, this is how it started before I started getting confused, about things.
Yeah. And you both, in kind of like in the original Psycho, I know I've talked about this in multiple podcasts, but the thing of Norman sinking the car and you kind of cheering for him in the original Psycho, you're almost just waiting, kind of like with teeth gritted and your hands and little fists like balled up, going, when's he just going to slip and go crazy? And he absolutely does, but it's in literally the last 30 seconds or minute of the film. It takes a long time to get there.
Well, it's a bit like having your cake and eating it, isn't it? It's a bit like actually Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, where he spends the entire film saying, I'm not that man anymore, I don't drink anymore, I have all these things I regret. My wife cured me of all that. My kind of dead wife. And then the last 10 minutes, he goes, right, I'm going to start drinking. I'm going to kill everybody. And it's kind of like, party's like, that's a shame, but party's, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also interesting in that it's all shot. I think of the original Psycho was taking place 85% at night, something like that.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah,
and this one's all shot, I would say 85% during the day.
Yeah, you have some great shots like that, like following on from the roof shot I mentioned earlier. You have when the young girl escapes, like the guy gets killed in the cellar, but you cut to her running away on the ground, like a roof view down. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But it's all like, it's like very stark white light. You don't really miss anything, Although saying that, there's some amazing shadows in the house. And again, that's Dean Cundy, who actually did Halloween 2 and 3 and the original Halloween. He was cinematographer again on this. And I think, he really brought a lot of different shades to it.
Yeah, I don't think they were doing it during the day for being cheap, like some other films might have done. This one, I think, very intentionally takes place during kind of the clear light of day. Of yes, a normal person operates, from 8 to 5 or whatever, and you do get into the scene where like Norman and Mary are hiding out in her room. Where she has to spend the night with this guy who has the big butcher knife, which is just absolute brilliant writing. But it also builds up,
like standing over as well. Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
And it does make you wonder if say Mrs. Spool hadn't gotten involved, what the relationship would have been, because she throws over her own mother for this guy. She's doing the crazy, college kid thing of, I found my mission or whatever. And
it's a bit of Stockholm syndrome as well, I think. It's a bit like, he starts rubbing off on her in the worst ways, It's like,
yeah.
I mean, not that he means her any harm, and that's the sad thing about the film. I think Norman is genuinely trying to hang on to his sanity all the way through. And then finally they kind of break him. But it's like, I mean, she obviously gets so caught up in everything that's going on that, she it's a great ending where they shoot her, for attacking him. And it's all like a huge miscommunication. She thinks he's called her mother. He doesn't know what's going on, and she's stabbing at him and the police shoot her.
Yeah. It's and of course, her fingerprints are all over the knife that's killed Robert Loggia. There at the end, and it's the sheriff just like kind of like at the end of Psycho, they have the psychologist explaining, and now the sheriff is like, well, she clearly went crazy, and that's the story, and Norman's clearly sane as you or I.
He's the victim.
Yeah. Let's send him home to go be back in this crazy ass house where yet more bodies have piled up.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, we also have a fantastic score by Jerry Goldsmith, which has shades of Twilight Zone the movie. In fact, I think his original theme for Norman was actually kind of used in Twilight Zone the movie instead. I'll be interested to watch that and see if I could kind of see what would fit. And a little bit of Gremlins as well, a little bit of Poltergeist, kind of all around that time, that kind of synth, kind of like dark, doomy synth. But Norman's theme is kind of heartbreaking, the one that actually opens and closes the film.
And they also don't go in and like rely on the shrieking violins or any of that in this that I really picked up on.
Yeah, which I think is a really good move, because that would really date it and also compare it to the original. And I think the fact that they just have that, that little kind of recap at the start is enough, really,
Yeah, it's enough. It's enough to clue you in. It gives you everything you kind of need to know of once they say, oh, he was dressing up in his mother's clothes and all that. But man, you can talk about how impactful that original scene is a million times over in film school, but it sure is.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And just
well, it's like the chest burster from Alien. It's one of those things that never gets old when you watch it. You're just like, oh my God,
And just ending then on Janet Leigh's eye. And I just feel like, I know we would categorize this based on your definition as a thriller. But I feel like horror has been chasing that scene since 1961 in a lot of ways.
No, totally. And I think all those guys around this time, like John Carpenter and Richard Franklin, must have been massively influenced by Psycho when they started their careers. They must have been like, that's the bar you need to reach, really.
Yeah. And and in its own way, I would compare it to talking about John Carpenter. Thinking of Laurie, huddling against, in a dark corner with just a little bit of light across her.
Yeah,
is kind of the comparison of like, kind of the final girl sort of look, kind of the opposite of what happens with her mother. But yeah, this movie doesn't quite have anything that iconic, but damn, it does a really good job of picking up and you might like this one better than the original. I would say, if the original is a 10, this one's a 7.5 to an 8. Which I was expecting it to be about a 5.
Yeah. No, I really think this is great, and this was a big hit. It cost 5 million, which is like peanuts, and it made about 35 million. So it was a sizable hit that year, and of course led on to Psycho 3 and 4. Which I haven't watched. I'm tempted to watch Psycho 3 now. I know Psycho 3 was directed by Perkins, and it goes a bit campier. And then Psycho 4 was kind of like a made-for-TV movie, almost like a prequel with Henry Thomas as a young Norman, kind of bookended by Perkins.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
I think I watched that when it broadcast as a kid.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I'll have to go look it up.
They're all supposed to be fairly decent. And then, Bates Motel, which, like I said, I kind of have, but I haven't gone around to watching, which, I know a lot of people say good things about. But yeah, really, this is like a great sequel. This is like, I'd probably put this as sequels into the same bracket as Aliens compared to Alien. I would say it's that good, It really doesn't drop the ball. It totally respects the original, but it chooses to like try to take the story in a different direction, which is kind of very brave, and I think it accomplishes it.
I think it's a really good comparison. Yes, as singular as the original Alien was, and then them spinning and doing something very different with the same sort of rules you've learned from the first movie. But let's expand and see what else we can kind of do. But everything feels like a piece. Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. Yeah. As far as horror sequels go, that was my greatest concern, was what you said at the beginning was, Friday, it's not like Friday the 13th part 4 or whatever, where it's, just more of same of Jason
shipping some more victims.
So yeah, and we're Halloween 2, I felt like was way too much of the same of you guys are just saw that we liked that first story, so you just kept telling it.
Even up to Halloween now, to be honest, it's like we're still going.
But I've not watched any Bates Motel. I think I watched like 20 minutes of it one day when I was on the elliptical or something, but people really did flip out for that show. But I think it was so niche-y that it just didn't get enough traction. I didn't see anything wrong with it. I just got dropped into the middle of something that I didn't know what I was watching, because I was watching a mid-season episode. But yeah, there's a mythology to try and stick with, the very basics of what you learned in Psycho, and You can't go wrong. I would highly recommend this because everyone's seen Psycho. I bet people of our generation largely have not seen Psycho 2. I bet people 10 years older than us saw it when it came out.
Yeah.
And probably not since.
It's a little bit of a lost film as well, I think. I think it kind of like, although it did well when it came out, like you say, it's kind of like been bunched in with the lesser sequels around it for the same franchise. And, and it doesn't really get, I guess like trumpeted as much as it should. So it's funny. We've talked about this many times, but like, it's funny which films survive and grow as a cult and which just kind of sit there and nobody really cares about them. And I feel like this is kind of one of the latter, where it just kind of, anybody who's seen it goes, wow, that was actually really good. Have you seen that? But like nobody really knows about it that much still.
Well, I mean, it's, to be honest, I'm part of me is still just offended at the idea of making a sequel to a Hitchcock movie. I can't, like I said, I used the word gall. I couldn't believe someone had the gall to do that. And part of me is still like, Jesus, I can't believe they decided that was a good idea. Like that.
Well, it's funny you should say that because like when it came out, I think that was the main thing everybody hit it with. It's like, you can't do a sequel to Psycho. We're not even going to watch this because you can't do a sequel to Psycho. And even I think Anthony Perkins, for different reasons. I think, obviously from his reasoning was, I've had to live this for 20 years. A bit like Leonard Nimoy and Spock, weirdly. He kind of hated it for years and years. And then he was like, oh, sod it, I might as well just embrace it. Right? Mm-hmm. But then also, I think he read Tom Holland's script and he was like, no, this is actually doing something interesting with the character. I'm not just coming home from prison or mental institute and installing a new shower. I'm actually, other things are happening in this script. And that's what got him on board. But a huge amount of critics, back then just couldn't get past the fact there was a sequel to Psycho. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting because, we're in an era now where people rebooting or bringing something back from 20 years ago is so common.
But also, like, even Carpenter's The Thing, interestingly, if you go back and read a lot of the reviews for that, they're pretty much all negative. And they either say it's way too gory and it's just like special effects, or they say, why would you remake a classic from the 1950s? So again, they're like, knocking on it for like, you have this great original film from the 50s. We don't need a remake. We don't want a remake. And it's like, and it's funny how things change. And now, if you say The Thing, people think of the 80s version, probably above the 50s one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people who were fans of the one in the 50s are now my parents' age or older. But I mean, I think that probably Hitch has survived, Howard Hawks, I guess, did the original Thing. Was it Hawks? I'm going to say it is.
Chris Nyby, but I think it was ghost directed by Howard Hawks, probably.
Okay.
A bit like a Tobe Hooper Poltergeist situation.
But I mean, it's you go back and watch it and it definitely feels like the best crappy 50s sci-fi movie you've ever seen. It's good. It's enjoyable, but it's not in the same ballpark as the Carpenter one. I don't think
they're not looking past the fact as well that if you do it well, there's a lot more to that story you can explore, And I think that's what they've done with Psycho 2 as well. They've explored other facets of the story.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say, like, we went and saw The Thing. Who was in that? Was it Mary Elizabeth Winstead or somebody?
The 2011 one? Yeah.
She was by far the best part of that movie to me. I didn't entirely...
She was anyone without a beard.
Yeah. I didn't really super embrace that movie. But as far as like expanding the mythology and whatnot, it ended up feeling like an episode of X-Files to me in many ways. But
well, I think also with that Thing remake, the 2011 one, it promised something different, and then it very quickly fell back into almost copying Carpenter's too closely. And it's like, yeah, you know, you're not really giving us anything new. There's a couple of little bits that were kind of interesting. Like I actually like the filling idea, or the fact that you can't replicate fillings. So they kept finding people's fillings. But it's like, there wasn't enough of that. It was just like, you know, it was playing the same beats as Carpenter's.
Yeah. And I guess maybe back to our point of this movie does something entirely new, kind of like Aliens did with the premise. So if you're looking for something good and good and Halloweenish for this season, I think that this is a really good fit. It definitely has all the iconic imagery. I never went on the Universal Studios tour. My understanding is that house was always there. And it's apparently like half the size you think it is. Which I kept watching as the actors were running up to that house to be like, are they starting to look like giants? Are they starting to look like giants?
They come to the second floor window, their head.
Yeah. But hearing that they made another set where they could do this exterior shots made a whole world of sense. But yeah, it was clearly the same swamp and all the rest of it. But yeah, I think it'd be, if you're looking for something for Halloween to put on. You said this was streaming on Peacock, right?
Yeah, for free. So you can, in fact, I think you can get all the Psycho movies on Peacock at the moment.
And I watched it streaming on Amazon, not realizing, despite the fact I have Peacock, it was going to be on there. So yeah, it is available. It's not something that's like hidden right now. So do give it a shot as part of your Halloween viewing.
Yeah, definitely. I totally recommend this. I've loved it kind of since I first saw it, as a 10-year-old, I guess. And I still thoroughly enjoyed it yesterday watching it again. If anything, I feel like, you get a bit more out of it every time you see it. And I think Anthony Perkins is fantastic. I feel like that's an acting masterclass. His slow kind of like just getting slowly more and more twitchy as the film goes on, and stuttering more, and just like, he's holding on for dear life,
Yeah, now that I've seen it, I'm actually looking forward to going back and rewatching it so I can see how all of it fits together.
Yeah, totally. It'd be like Knives Out or something,
Right. Because definitely the watching it last night, I was maybe at the hour mark, I was like, what the hell is going on? But thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much, Simon. Really appreciate you bringing this one to us. And we'll be back again within a few days to release another Halloween podcast. So do stick with us throughout the Halloween season.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.